Hey, what's up guys? John Harry. Financial contagion is spreading through China, Canada, and now here in America.
China's yuan is at a 16-year low. Economists say these are signs China could be facing an extended economic downturn.
And governments around the world are doing everything they can possibly do to hide the reality of what's really going on. Here's a good example. Evergrande. $300 billion in liabilities, $256 billion in assets. They were supposed to go through everything. And they decided, let's push things out. Let's push it to January.
China Evergrande has been given extra time to deal with its debt crisis.
The court has postponed legal proceedings until January 29th of next year.
Same thing with government shutdown here. Let's push it to January. Everything that is happening right now, they're trying to extend it all to January, just in a couple weeks. You have to ask yourself why. What's really going on? Well, in this video, I'm going to break it down and show you exactly what's going on in China, in Canada, here in America as well. Please hit the like button. When you hit the like button, YouTube will share this content to educate more people about what's happening in the world and the economy. And if you'd like to fix your credit, we'd love to help you at my company, GreatCreditFast.com. That's GreatCreditFast.com. If you have late payments, medical bills, charge-offs, foreclosures, bankruptcies, repossessions, and a negative item on your credit report, go to GreatCreditFast.com. Click the link in the description just below this video. Schedule a free strategy session to position you for what I believe is going to be the greatest wealth transfer in American history. Take a look at this. So Evergrande liquidation would leave China with 1.5 million angry home buyers. Now, their restructuring plan is January, right? They're going to push the hearing until January. Now, let's look at this. $300 billion in debt, $256 billion in overall assets. And when you look at their creditors, you have BlackRock, you have HSBC among largest buyers of Evergrande, right? At the peak QE period, quantitative easing, money was everywhere. Interest rates were record lows. And they were investing in Evergrande, right? So you start to look at the exposure that's being put here. Fund giant BlackRock and investment banks HSBC and UBS were among the largest buyers of debt, the embattled Chinese real estate developer Evergrande. Morningstar data shows BlackRock added 31.3 million notes of Evergrande's debt between January and August 2021, pushing its stake in the company to 1% of its assets to 1.7 billion. Asian high yield bond fund, according to Morningstar, HSBC increased position in the company by 40% through July, according to Morningstar. UBS increased position 25% through May, the latest data available in the fund trackers database. Now look at this. Look at what's going on in China's real estate market. This is an absolute bloodbath. This is a great financial crisis right here, and here's China now, right? So you're seeing this in 2022. Remember, it was really difficult to get money out of banks. Small banks in China are running into trouble. Savers could lose everything. This is CNN, by the way. This is what they're reporting. Peter had his life savings about $6 million in accounts in 3 small banks in China's central Hunan province. He says he has not been able to access it since April. The 45-year-old entrepreneur asked us to call him Peter for security reasons. He's from the eastern city of Wenzhou and is just one of 1,000 depositors who have been fighting to recover their savings. Right? So you start to see, you saw what happened when things started to get a little bit concerning with Evergrande. People started getting nervous in China. Then it was weeks like that until they could finally get their money out after massive protests. Now, when you see what's going on in China, how they were kind of propping everything up, trying to hide everything, you can see clearly they're doing the same damn thing here in America, and they've been doing this for quite some time. Here's a really good example. They said that, forbearance program kept 2 million people in their homes. This is according to Secretary Marcia Fudge, right? She is the 18th Secretary of Housing and Urban Development here in America, right? So 118,000, 19,000 followers. She goes on and talks about how this is a great thing. Well, now forbearance expired about 2.5 weeks ago, right? About 2 weeks ago, November 30th. So you start to look at this, everything is brewing, everything is starting. Now, are we going to say 2 million people ended in forbearance in there? No, but probably a good percentage of people, their forbearances expired around that November 30th period. Then you look at what's going on here in Canada. Canada likely sitting on the largest housing bubble of all time. Canada is probably sitting on the largest bubble of all time. This is Bloomberg. Colmer argued that inflating home prices in Canada are a result of 2 decades worth of easy money supplied by Bank of Canada monetary policy for numerous reasons. At the present moment, he sees risk in mortgage rates climbing. Canadian bond yields are dragging up, particularly at a time when debt-to-income ratios are sky high. The worst part of the housing bubble is we have a credit bubble underneath of it. The amount of Canadian leverage into the system versus incomes is pretty astronomical. And we've seen debt servicing doing going up dramatically, while the Canadian banks are doing their part to stop the housing market from toppling over. So you now look here, the same thing. You can see what they're doing in Canada. You can see what they're doing with the forbearance program. Now, what they're doing here with first-time home buyers is they are trying to change the way student loan debt is calculated so more people can qualify. So they're putting people in a position to take on more debt. They're trying to prop up this housing market to really paint this story of everything being sound, everything being normal, everything being okay. But nothing is okay. Nothing is what it seems. They just came out, 2 weeks ago saying that VA pauses foreclosures on veterans facing difficulties making mortgage payments. They're propping up everything. But the big question is, how long can they prop all of this stuff up? How long can they keep this show going? I don't think they're going to be able to hold this up for much longer. I mean, you look at what Biden's doing now. He wants to give 500,000 Americans money to buy homes. This came out yesterday. And now the government shutdown is set for the same exact month, January, next week, in 3 weeks from now, for the shutdown here in America. So you have Evergrande, you have the shutdown here in America, all starting in, potentially in January, unless they extend it again, which would not surprise me. But Business Insider's reporting that 99% of Americans will be financially worse off than they were pre-pandemic by mid-2024, JP Morgan says. JP Morgan said the vast majority of Americans have burned through excess savings. It's likely that all but the top 1% of consumers will be worse off financially in mid-2024 than they were pre-pandemic. Well, I would argue that most people are worse off today than they were, before, 2020, 2021. And the reason for that, inflation is through the roof. Everything is so much more expensive for the everyday American than it was just a few years ago. So if they are saying that things are going to start to get bad in 2024, you have to ask yourself, well, what's going to happen? What is going to happen? People are going to be forced to sell off assets. Banks are going to start getting very, very skittish and concerned, especially as deposits continue to drain to make up for the rising cost of inflation, the rising cost of living. But when you look at all this information, you see what's going on in Evergrande, and you see the biggest banks, UBS and all these big banks, HSBC, all these banks going through this very, very, very big shift. You have to ask yourself, what's going to happen in January with $300 billion in debt that has to get restructured? They only have $256 billion. They only have $256 billion, and 1.5 million angry homebuyers in China are basically being stuck, left holding the bag, right? What I think is going to happen, I believe we are going to see a situation with a massive contraction in lending, not just in China. This is going to be a worldwide contraction in lending. As consumers in Canada, they're already going through their fair share of problems. Here in America, worldwide, continue bracing for higher prices, continuing defaulting on other obligations. And what's ultimately going to happen? Banks are going to be sitting there holding the bag. And because of this, they're going to get more and more and more skittish on who they're going to be lending money to and what they're going to be doing. Commercial real estate is going to be a very, very, very big problem because a lot of banks are not going to want to refinance these properties. And you have $2.7 trillion worth of these loans here in America that need to get refinanced from now until 2027. That's 1 out of every 10 properties in this country, and that's commercial, which is 5 units and above, which could be warehouses, could be industrial properties. Any commercial property has to go back to a bank to get a refinance. 1 in 10. Right? We're walking into this massive bubble. Governments everywhere are trying to hide it. And they're not going to be able to do it for much longer. So why do I think that the biggest funds, BlackRock, Blackstone, KKR, Starwood Capital, they're all holding like massive, massive mountains of cash? Because they know things are about to hit the fan. And when it does, banks aren't going to want to lend, and they're sitting on all this money, and they'll be the only show in town able to lend on it. And they'll be the ones lending out on all these assets, taking first positions, second positions, all these properties, and they're going to absolutely dominate. So we're walking into the greatest wealth transfer in American history, and I believe everyone should be prepared for it. If you have high interest rate consumer credit card debt, you want to get out of it. If you're in a situation right now, maybe you're thinking about buying a home, I'd probably hold back unless the deal was absolutely incredible. I would save up as much money as possible, put yourself in a really, really strong position, because home sellers that are, so motivated right now, not really that motivated, give it 6 months. Give it 5 months. You're going to start seeing people look at the world differently, and they're going to be reacting out of emotion. And there's going to be a lot more sellers that are likely going to be much more motivated as taxes and insurance continue to rise. All of which is going to be a great thing for investors that are looking to go out there and capitalize on a lot of pain. Because that's what investors do. They buy when the masses are afraid. And soon, the masses are likely going to be very, very, very afraid. What do you think of this entire situation? Drop below. Let's have a conversation about this. Do you think we're walking into a ripple effect, a financial contagion that's going to spread worldwide? Let's have a conversation about it. And if you'd like to fix your credit, we'd love to help you at my company, GreatCreditFast.com. That's GreatCreditFast.com. If you have late payments, medical bills, charge-offs, foreclosures, bankruptcies, repossessions, and a negative item on your credit report, go to GreatCreditFast.com, book a call, click the link in the description, and schedule a call for tomorrow, and I'll catch you in the next video.